and welcome to Game Changers with Vicki Abelson, who would be me. And my guest tonight is an old and wonderful friend. You're not old. We've known each other a long time. You know, that's a horrible thing to say.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Good
Jeff Pevar is in the house. He's in his house. So Jeff, tell us where you are right now, what we're looking at.
Well, this is my kind of combination studio office. I live in Ashland, Oregon, which is right above the California border. If you're driving on Route 5 past Mount Shasta, if you will, and you drive up the Siskiyou Mountain Range and then come down into a river valley, and that's the Rogue River Valley. And Ashland is the very first town, and it's a really idyllic, beautiful place.
And how did you find this?
Well, I was touring here about 16 years ago with David Crosby, this band that we had at the time called CPR. And some mutual friends introduced me to a woman who rocked my world and changed my life. And it was really the best thing that ever happened to me. So I went to visit her about 5 days at the end of the tour, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, we have to talk about this love story, because in love in the time of COVID this is just the fact that it exists. Okay, so how were you involved with anybody at the time? Were you single when you met?
I was trying to figure out what my life was about. I had been married and divorced, and very amicably. My ex, Ben, and I are still, pals, and it was really, I'm really proud of that, because she's a fantastic person.
Oh, nice.
And, sometimes as people evolve, they evolve in different directions. And so I was single. I was, dating around a little bit, but just, I was kind of searching for myself, really. And fortunately, I was very busy with music. But the moment that I saw her, it was kind of like, oh God.
Yeah. Okay, I love this, because I believe in that. Do you believe in destiny? Do you believe?
Well, the thing is, of course I do, and in fact, I recognize her as.
Okay,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was freaky. Just it's like, and it depends on how much certain people go into the land of woo woo. But we did talk to someone who said, "Oh yeah, you guys have known each other for many lifetimes."
That was my very next question, because I've done that. I'm very woo-woo and I believe in all. And I also think, Jeff, that when you meet somebody and you feel like you know them, it's because you do.
I am open to, I have been so amazed at how life has unfolded, and all these dreams of mine have kind of unfolded into reality. Certainly not placed in front of me, without working towards it or for it. But life has shown that it is full of mystery and wonder and possibilities. And I'm going to think that way until I'm convinced otherwise.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so how are you? And I was explaining to you before the show that the COVID crazies are the community that are watching. Most of the people that are watching us right now. How have you and Inga, like, what were you doing when the lights went out? Like, what was your life like? Were you about to go on the road? Were you on the road? Where were you when COVID hit?
Well, I am proud to say that both of us, both Inger and I, are artists that work at home, and we cultivate business opportunities at home. Inger is a master sculptor and painter, and she's been very busy working on her art for years, and constantly blows me away with what she does, and a lot of clients, because she's been selling a lot of her stuff, and I'm so proud of her. I mean, I couldn't be more proud. And
what
medium?
What does she work? Yeah, what medium does she work with?
So I know that, and I'm a guitar player, so I can't be exactly specific. I know that for many years, she was working on all different types of art, oils, pastels maybe. She even did a run using latex paints, colorful latex paints, and it was absolutely beautiful. She seems to go through periods where there's kind of a run of a certain inspiration, but in the last, I know that she took sculpture in school, and in the last, I'm going to guess 10 years, that has really taken off, and she's put a lot of energy into that. And she's
what material does she
clay.
sculpt?
Starts with clay, and then there's a whole very intensive production that happens where you make molds, and then they are, you pour 2,000 degree bronze in there, and then it's a whole thing that, being a guitar player, scares the hell out of me. She's amazing at it, and fortunately we have close friends in the area who are also adept sculptors and assistants and mentors, and so it's been a fantastic opportunity. The fact that she has taken her passion and just run with it, and that there's a community here and people who are good at doing the same thing, who can, she can partner with, or bring it to a foundry, and they can work on it together to get it from the clay into this finished piece that is just astoundingly beautiful.
Fantastical. So now, is that where Inger is from? Is she from up there?
I think she was from I know that she was from the Midwest, and like myself, both of us had been through parental separations or divorces that kind of gave us the opportunity to not be sequestered in one area. So it opened up. I like to look at it, rather than it being this horrible thing that happened, it was actually what needed to happen for us all to go venturing out to find where we're supposed to be. And
I agree with all of that.
yeah, so her travels brought her to California, and we were both married once before, and she has an amazing son named Soren, who is just doing great, and he lives in the Midwest, and he has her first grandson, which is and just a gorgeous young man, so Finley. So it's just been an amazing unfolding of chapters of our lives, and the fact that we happen to eclipse at this one moment is total happenstance. Yet I'd like to think that it was bound to happen.
Serendipity, as Tony said. I believe in serendipity. So when COVID hit, you guys were both working at home. You were at home in Oregon. Did you have plans
Yes. Yeah. So you did ask, and to further answer your initial question, we live in a home. One of the reasons why we moved here is because it's a big enough living room that we could do our own shows here when I'm not out on tour. And it has been such a blessing because, we're all very eclectic musicians, and we like to do lots of different things. So we write our own music together, Inger and I. We also have various projects. She had a funk band that she let me play in. It was cool, and there's some really talented people in this area, but admittedly, coming from New York, it's not like there's as many, So fortunately, as time has gone on, we've found some wonderful musicians to play with, and we've done various shows here. Some would be we would bring in dear friends. My friend Robbie Dupree from Woodstock came out, and Kenny White came out and did a show, and various guests. And we have a house band, so people could send their material in advance, come in a day early, do a rehearsal, do the show. We also did theme nights. So we did a Rolling Stones nights. We did 2 because they sold out so quickly. And then this other side project that Inger and I put on a Halloween was the music of Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, and people flipped out. We did a costume party because it was Halloween. We all wore wigs and all that stuff, and people flipped out so much to where we decided to have a project that would play a half a dozen times a year. We played the Oregon Country Fair main stage. We played the Armory here. It was voted Concert of the Year years ago. So, and actually at that first show, we had two different painters painting live during the performance. One did a Jimmy and one did a Jimmy Page, And, it's a cool area to live. There's a lot of forward thinkers. There's a lot of healers. There's a lot of, exciting, fresh-minded people here.
Okay, so let me ask, because as we was talking about before, I actually have invited you to play at Women Who Write years ago when I saw you at NAMM, and Steve Postell's played the living room. Many people we both know have played. Right. And so now I'm being asked all the time when I think I might feel comfortable having 50, 60 people in my house again.
Right.
What does that feel like to you guys?
That's a great question. That is so hard to answer.
I know.
Fortunately, we're planning some outdoor stuff. As I'm sure most people feel, this is we're navigating something we have no idea how it's going to really unfold. And I just think if we're being smart and not being pompous, maybe things will get close to how they were. I would like to think that.
How COVID crazy are you guys, or not?
Oh, well, we do the masks. I mean, at first, when I went shopping, I washed every single item I took out of the bag. And, I've kind of relaxed with it a little bit. I'm very fortunate that, I just hit 64. So, it's...
You're not impressing me. I'm 65, so I'm already double vaxxed and in efficacy. Okay. Have you guys had vaccines?
Not yet. And, it's not like I'm running to do it, but I know I need to do it. So it's going to happen, I'm sure. I just, I've heard people who are, just a little crazy about it. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I just kind of wish I didn't have to do it.
Yeah. But speaking as someone who has done it and even got a little sick from the second one, it was so worth it. And it was no big deal. No. And I do feel a sense of a little bit more at ease than I did before.
Well, that's awesome. And I probably will too, assuming that I'll be okay. I know that there's a few people have had horrible reaction to it. And so I'm an optimist, and I will continue to be. And that's ultimately what we have.
So do you guys have people in your bubble? What has your life been like for the last year? Do you have people in your bubble?
Yeah, you could say that, admittedly, one plus is that there's not a lot of it up here. There's not a lot of cases compared to like living in a Los Angeles or New York or whatever. So that makes a huge difference. So when you're thinking about the numbers game, the chances, and also the people that we have been around, we're making sure that they're using the same kind of, just being careful, wearing masks where you go, washing your hands. We take, stuff for our hands, and it's a little bit of a chance, but because we have an ensemble. The last show that we did was a quartet show,
which I saw. So when did you first decide that it was okay to play music with other people in the same room?
Well, at first, everyone was kind of not being very close and wearing masks, and then we just kind of, whether we were being blindly crazy or trusting, as we talked to everyone and just said, look, you got to listen to how safe you are. I don't want to harm myself or my wife by playing music with you. And so it's a leap of faith. This is such a tough one to navigate. And I try not to make a habit out of, seeing too many people. I exercise, safety always. and it's a little bit of a chance, but I've always been very healthy, and I would like to think, God forbid, if I even got this thing, that I'd be fine, but I don't want to get it, and which is why I'm sure I will be getting the vaccine soon.
Will Lee was on last week, and I was the week before they did this big concert at the Beacon last March. I met Jackson Browne at a Wild Honey concert here and hugged him and everything, and then read like a week later that he had gotten COVID, and Will got it, and like everybody at that Beacon, like a lot of people at that Beacon show got sick. Has it touched your life? Has COVID affected anybody that you know well?
Good question. No one's coming to mind, although, Jackson is a friend.
Yes.
And he's been amazing to me. We've worked together in the past. There's a really funny story, just since you brought him up, because I love this story. So we recorded the first CPR record at his studio, and he was so sweet to me, because when I was touring with Mark Cohn, Jackson came to sit in a few times, so we got to know one another, and he could see that I could play the guitar, and
just a little bit.
He had respect for me. He made it very well known that he really liked what I did. And when we recorded at his studio, he said, "Hey, if you need anything, my gear is next door." And he opened the door and he grabbed a Dumble lamp for me and let me play it. It was Lowell George's Dumble lamp, and it's just crazy stuff like that. And but this funny story. So I was still living in Connecticut area, East Coast, New York, Connecticut. I was going back and forth, and he goes, "Listen, I'm doing a couple TV shows, and since you're out there, and I can't get Lindley to do it, Lindley played this instrument called the tambura on this song, the next voice you hear." Well, that's exactly what I was saying, right?
Yeah.
He goes, it should be relatively simple. It's a one-note part played on a tambura with a violin bow. And I'm going like, "Oh yeah, no problem." All right, I'll call you, and I'm going to ask Lindley if we can get the instrument. So I leave and I call my friend. "How the fuck are you using a violin bow?" I just tuned all the strings to one note and then just saw it away. It was, and we played on, it was Conan O'Brien, and another, maybe Letterman. And it was kind of a very moody song, next voice you hear. And so on the first show, it pans to the band and everyone's, very somber and very serious. And then it goes to me and I'm like smiling, going like, "Yeah, I'm just playing one note." After the show, he said, "Great job, but can you not smile?"
Well, I saw your performance of the decade, which you just sent to me, which I think I had actually seen before, of you lip syncing the saxophone behind Joe Cocker. What the hell was that about?
So, oh my God, I sometimes think back at some of these moments, and I wouldn't even believe it if it wasn't true. When I toured with Joe Cocker, who, by the way, was such a beautiful man.
We have to talk about Joe, but yeah. Okay.
Salt of the earth, and he treated everybody so respectfully and took care of everyone. On nights off, he'd take the entire entourage, everyone having to do with the concert, out to like 5-star restaurants. He was selling out, 20,000 seat concerts. So
right. You could afford it, but still.
Most people don't do that.
Right.
I don't know anybody who does that, who is selling out, 20,000 seat to take out 50 to 100 people,
Wow.
So that's Joe Cocker, class act. But anyway, so it was the beginning of a tour, and at the time, Joe's manager was Michael Lang, who put on Woodstock, right?
Yeah.
And Michael and I had worked together on a number of different projects. He was managing Rickie Lee Jones when I was working with Rickie on the second time I worked with her. But he brought half the band over for a thing called San Remo, which is it's a televised all over Europe. It's from San Remo, Italy, and every band plays their hit single. So it's like I mean, the list goes on and on of who's, who comes on. But
Right.
I learned at that time that when a or a single is made, they'll often make a version with no lead vocal for television shows that might not have the wherewithal to be able to set up the band so it could sound really good, or
Right.
something like this, where it's like it's a one-off. You get on stage, they play the tape, the band mimes to the tape, and Joe sings live.
Right.
So it's the day of the show, and I'm like, the song is Unchain My Heart. And at the time, the saxophone player on tour with us was Marty Kursick, who is a beautiful man and a friend of mine, and he's no longer here. But anyway, he wasn't there, and I'm like, there's a saxophone solo, and there's no saxophone. I think I should play the saxophone. Can you get me a saxophone? So I asked if they would get me one so I could practice in the mirror, so I could learn the melody, or at least the rhythm, so I could look somewhat convincing
Yeah.
playing. So for anyone in the studio audience who wants to look, Unchain My Heart, San Remo, 1988.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And you look amazing, but it's also it's a little what is it? It's like it's a little saxophone.
It's a tenor solo, but it's an alto. They got me an alto saxophone. So any musician would who knew anything about that would know for sure that I wasn't playing it. Besides the leather pants and the pink body shirt that
Yeah,
they.
the whole look was fantastic. But you were really dancing it. You were doing it.
I was trying to sell it. What can I say?
So
But the funny thing at the end, Artie Garfunkel was on the gig too, and he did one of his songs. And then we were all hanging out at the bar afterwards, and I went up to him. We were having a few beers or whatever. And I said, "Man, I'm just a big fan of your music. I'd love to play with you sometime." And he goes, "You know what? We're actually thinking about adding a saxophone to the tour." True story.
Oh my God. Did you ever get to play with him?
You know what? The next time I saw him was when David and Graham and I played Carnegie Hall. It was the one time in my life that I played Carnegie Hall, and I actually flew my father up from Florida
Oh,
and got him a limo from his hotel to Carnegie Hall. And in the middle of the show, I'm going to cry. Graham Nash said, "I'd like to introduce the Pevar family. Would you please stand up?"
oh my God.
Yeah.
That had to be like your father's proudest moment of his life.
Well, certainly was a lot better than when I told him I was going to quit high school. It went over a lot better.
So let's talk about that. I want to talk about more about Joe Cocker and how CPR and all of that, but let's go back to the beginning. So where did you grow up, Jeff? Where were you in school?
Well, I'm not convinced I've entirely completed the
Yes, I'll accept that.
but admittedly, being a musician gives you license to stay in touch with your child, and that's more so what I mean. I am an adult. I make adult decisions most of the time. But yeah, I'm from Connecticut, Hartford area, and I from seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I was sold. I mean, that just was it for me. I felt.
Did you play anything prior to that? Did you play?
Just no. And in fact, after seeing the Beatles, it was first air guitar before it was real.
No, wait a minute. I was 9. You were really lit. You were 8. You were a little kid.
Yeah, I started at 10.
Okay.
I started 10. There was 2 years of air guitar. I needed to kind of sort that out, kind of get that really happening. I figured.
So was George your guy? Was George your guy?
Well,
when you saw
I got to admit, Paul was it for me. And actually, a few years ago, while rehearsing with Crosby, Paul was down the hall, and we had a chance to hang out. And not only that, but we got invited into their room, and I'm sitting about 3 feet in front of him while they're going through 6 songs, and I'm like, I felt like a 12-year-old, girl just melting into the couch. And then they came in to watch us play. So it was so full circle for me, like my true hero, the guy who just blew me away musically, his spirit, his laughter, his joy, the sparkle in his eye. Wow. It was, I just feel so fortunate. I used to say lucky. I think luck can be total happenstance, and fortune is something that you manifest through your perseverance of following the passion of what you want to do with your life. And,
I agree. I think luck is that. They say when opportunity meets perseverance is what luck is. So, and you also play bass. Did you, was that something that you did then, or did you pick that up later?
Good question. I have become adept at working in the recording studio. And when composing and working on stuff myself, I often play all the instruments. In fact, on our record that Inger and I did, Anthem, I'm playing everything except drums. So bass and keyboards and mandolin and lap steel and percussion and So over time I've become adept at it. But when Jefferson Starship asked me to fill in on guitar, I kind of made a connection with them, and then they were doing a tour. Well, Jefferson Starship at that point in time had no bass player. Their keyboard player, Chris Smith, was playing keyboards and keyboard bass. And then they did a bigger tour called The Heroes of Woodstock, which was a celebration of the musicians who played at Woodstock, and a fantastic combination of musicians. So they asked me if I would play bass, and I said sure. So I decided to buy a 5-string bass, which I had really no experience at, and but yeah, it was really an amazing opportunity. And there's some videos of me and Mark Cohn where I'm playing bass. There's a really nice version of Pevar recorded at Austin City Limits, and yeah, I play bass on a few records, including my own. But David Wilcox, I play guitar and bass on one of his records, and I love playing bass. And there's a song on the CPR record I play bass.
Well, what's interesting, Jeff, is that you also oft play guitar like a bass, which is fascinating to me. But you pluck a guitar you play lead guitar without a pick with your fingers.
Awesome.
I don't think I know anybody else that does that.
Jeff Beck does that.
Oh, yes, he does. Yes, of course he does. I just saw Beck for the first time, actually.
Yeah. Jim Messina was an influence as far as the sound that he got with Loggins Messina, the clean Telecaster, and just beautiful. It's just so intimate, and it's so it's hard to find words, except that when you hear that sound, it's different. But for me, I have a connection to the instrument that's just, I just feel like having my fingers on the strings gives me more control to the velocity, to the touch, to the feeling, and admittedly, the pick sometimes just feels clumsy to me. So I kind of started.
Were you doing that from the beginning? Was it something that started getting? No.
I mean, I still use a pick. It just kind of, it's like apples and oranges. It's just a technique, and there's certain things that you have to use a pick. And certain times where I just take the thing and put it in my mouth because I'm bored with it, or I just want to get it the fuck out of the way. So
is Beck one of your guitar heroes?
Oh God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Big time. I went through the gambit and the list. Growing up or attempting to grow up in the 60s, 70s, with Clapton and Hendrix and Beck and Alvin Lee, and then graduating, of course, when I heard McLaughlin, it blew my mind, and I couldn't believe it, and it was beyond me. But the prowess, kind of blew me away, and I got into fusion a little bit. But the guys who really kicked me into the next stratosphere was Robin Ford and Larry Carlton and Lowell George and Ry Cooder, and the list goes on. John Scofield, oh my God, and I could keep going.
Okay, so let's get back to so Paul McCartney first influence. So you're playing air guitar, you get a real guitar. Did you start on acoustic guitar? Are you playing electric guitar? What are you doing?
My brother Steve, who is about 10 years older than me. I have 3 brothers. Peter is the middle brother. I'm the baby, and Steve is 10 years older. And he brought a guitar home from college, and he went away for the summer And by the time he came back, he realized, oh, okay, this is now not my guitar. So yeah, I started, you know, it's interesting because back in the day, before in the internet, I did get a little chord book that had chord diagrams, so it shows you the little dots where you could put your fingers. This is a D
Right.
chord, you know, but it's not. So I went to sleep every night with the transistor radio by my ear, and so I was cultivating not only my own personal thing, but my family always listened to music. My father loved Frank Sinatra and Porgy and Bess and blah blah blah. But when I fell in love with the Beatles and this and that, I just started figuring out songs. So basically, I taught myself how to play. And are we okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We got frozen, and so we're not frozen. We're fine. I was just
Okay, cool.
making a little,
I saw your.
so,
So yeah, so then I started playing in little bands, with little guys. We'd get together and bang out in the bang guitars in the basement, and get told to turn it down and all that. And I think I got a gig at the West Hartford Jewish Center. And,
that's big.
but actually, when I was 15, I started playing in clubs. There was
Okay, so wait, so what was when you were did you know this is what I'm going to do? This is what I'm going to do.
Oh yeah. Oh
This
yeah.
is what I'm going to do.
Oh yeah. From the get go, I
Was
was.
there ever a plan B, Jeff?
Well, put it this way: I've done a few things. Like for instance, I met a fantastic guy, a musician friend of mine named Gary Siegel. He's a harmonica player, and he was doing kind of what you might call a day job. He was cleaning rugs, right? And his boss's name was Spaceman. The day after I decided to leave high school, my parents, who were not together at the time, and both of them wanted me to stick it out, and I tried it for another couple of weeks. But I really knew music was it for me. I was playing every weekend. And I decided to leave school and start augmenting my income so I could afford to be a guitar player. And so we were traveling around, with Spaceman, and they got gigs. And I was cleaning rugs, and I realized not that long into my tenure as a carpet cleaner by day, you can only get so good as a carpet cleaner. And with guitar, the ceiling was so much higher. So I thought, that's a better move for me.
Okay, so you start playing clubs at like 15, or how are you like getting by in school? Are you a natural good student? Are you not so good? How's that? No.
Well, admittedly, the combination of my parents breaking up, discovering marijuana, and getting obsessed with the guitar, all of those things kind of led me down the path of music. And the thing is that I got the live Allman Brothers at Fillmore East, and I figure out every lick on that record. And so the lessons were showing themselves to me. I mean, I was taking the initiative to I'm hearing this, and I'm going to figure this out. I remember getting the Yes record, and Mood for a Day came on, and I was like, I'm going to learn that. And I took the record player and listened to 3 notes and took it off and figured it out. And then I listened to the first 5 notes and then figured that out and did it all the way through the song. Now the record is unplayable, but at least I learned how to play the song. And I realized that my ear was good enough where I could hear, if I could hear it and spend the time to figure it out on the instrument, I can do this. So that's really how I learned how to play guitar. I just emulated all my favorite guitar players. And
you never studied, Jeff?
No.
Never. You taught yourself to read music?
Reading music for me hasn't been a strength. I use it to communicate to others, but the Beatles didn't read music. There's a lot of people. It just depends on what kind of musician you want to be. And admittedly, I am put into situations where I need to read, and so I will kind of painstakingly. For me, it's better if I get it in advance, and then I can study it to where I don't have to look at the paper. where I understand what they're communicating to me. And there's been a few hairy situations. I remember I was doing a jingle in New York, and thank God Ira Siegel was on the same date. And I said, Ira, what's this? How do you play this? So, I've kind of squeaked by, and admittedly, when I was with Ray Charles' band, it was all charts. But
Yeah.
but the guitar chair is mostly a rhythm instrument until it's time to solo, and when it's time to solo, it's improvising.
Right.
So when the chart said G7 flat 13 sharp 11, I knew if I played a G7, it sounded really good. I mean, it worked fine. And all the horns were playing all those other notes. And as time went on, I understood, I knew what those notes were. And then, man, if I count up from the first note to that flat 13, well, there's that note, and they're playing it. So now I know how to play a flat 13. So it was kind of, I got the gig, and it was.
Well, tell us how you got that gig. I mean, that's I can't believe you played.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a wild story. So I was very fortunate. I'm sure everyone's musical career unfolds kind of like the domino effect, right? So one thing leads to another. You get heard, you get recommended, someone sees you play, all of those types of things, right? So I ended up getting seen by a woman who brought me into a recording studio, and the man who owned the recording studio, his name is Doug Cupper, and Doug and I became very quick friends. He saw this young kid who drove up to his studio in a Volkswagen with a Marshall 412 in the back seat, and he's like, "You could just leave that in there. That's just I've got this little Fender Deluxe. It sounds great."
By the way, people are asking if you're comfortable standing. I didn't ask Jeff to stand through this.
No, I will say this. I've noticed in the last year, because I'm in my 60s, and when I sit too much, it's not good for my back. And I'm doing yoga. I'm doing core exercises. I actually enjoy staying upright. And I know that as the years go by, the chances of staying really upright are going to lessen.
As I punch over the thing. And by the way, your cousin is on the show. Cindy Ratner Pevar is saying hi. And Cindy Gold was at a dance at the West Hartford Jewish Center that you played at.
Oh, God. Well, her let's see, was it her uncle? Yeah, or no, her Steve Winnick, who was my first drummer. So they were related. I think she is his aunt, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, we've known each other since like pre-puberty. You know what I mean? That long.
And Cindy's saying that you played it at their engagement party in 1973.
Those are roots. Those are roots right there. So.
Okay, so getting back, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's fine. So, all right. So Ray Charles. So I got this opportunity to work at Doug's studio, right? And he started hiring me for sessions. My first session, gigs, playing on people's records, and I'm in my teens, and it's
unbelievable,
phenomenal opportunity, and I learned so much. And he introduced me to a lot of stuff. As time went on, it was advised and kind of thought, I need to go out to California to become rich and famous, right? And he goes, well, you need a demo tape. I'm going to give you free time to do a demo tape. So recorded a couple tunes. In fact, a very dear friend of mine who is a huge influence on my musical development, Michael Ruff. He got me my first tour with Rickie Lee Jones, but Michael plays on my first demos. Anyway, Doug ended up, I got an offer to move to Boston to work with a regional artist named James Montgomery. And so I ended up not going to California at that point in time. And Doug was using this tape we made for his clientele. Anyone who would come in who wanted to see what can you do in the studio, and then he'd play this tape and he would get a lot of clients. So immediately there was this really good give and take thing between the two of us. Well, I ended up moving back to the Hartford area. Doug gave me the keys to his studio. On my first record, in the credits, Doug Cupper, Keys to the Kingdom. Yeah. So, like, who does that? I'm going to trust you with all my gear. And I would go in
Wow.
after gigs at 3 in the morning or nights off, and I would just work and record and learn how to play all these instruments and write original music. And
Wow. You gave me
well,
goosebumps.
so to that led to this Ray Charles story. So it's a Friday, and I see in the Hartford Advocate that Ray Charles, well, it's that week, and I see that Ray Charles is going to play on Friday in New Haven, which is about 40 minutes from Hartford.
Mhm.
And I had the night off, which was rare because I was keeping busy playing with a couple bands. So,
Right.
of course, I decided not only am I going to, well, I'm going to go see Ray Charles. I've never seen Ray Charles. I don't know what to expect, except that I know that he's loved by millions, right?
Right.
That afternoon, I get a phone call from a band member of the jazz band. He said, "Listen, I just heard that they called our friend Morris to fill in on guitar because their guitar player had left. You should go down and get that gig." And on that, I got my things together and went down early. Now, the only thing that I had was a Rolling Stone magazine that had the very first time my name was in, maybe one of the only times it was mentioned in Rolling Stone, but there was a review of the Rickie Lee Jones record, the magazine, and it's the quote there is, "And the graceful pluck and weave of Jeff Pevar's guitar on the song 'It Must Be Love,' blah 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 blah." So I grabbed that as like, well, hey,
There's your credits.
I
There's your.
must be okay, took that with me and my dream. And I waited until, I'm standing outside of the theater, and then all of a sudden a Trailways type bus pulls up and they're unloading. And I go to the first guy, "Could you let me know who your band leader is?" And he pointed to a gentleman named Clifford Solomon, beautiful man. Told him that I was interested in the gig. He goes, "Well, we're just getting ready for sound check, so why don't you come on in and hang by the side of the stage. We're doing 2 shows." And it turned out that my friend, someone who has become an incredibly close friend of mine, Mo Pleasure, who has an amazing background as a multi-instrumentalist. He had sent his resume to Ray Charles's people because he wanted to play bass with the band, but he was filling in on guitar. He's a multi-instrumentalist, right? So I'm standing side stage seeing Morris's hands shake, and he's got the charts and they're falling on the floor, and you know, and so here I am watching the set, and I'm thinking, I've used this analogy a lot, the duality, like Animal Kingdom, where there's the devil and the angel, right? And the devil's going, "Jeff, you can't do this gig. They're charts. You don't read." And the angel's going, "Jeff, why would you quit before you even, maybe they're not that hard, So they finished the first set, and Clifford comes over to me and he goes, "So what do you think?" And I go, "I'm really interested." And he goes, "Do you have a tape?" And I go, "No, but I'll be right back." So they're finishing their first gig. I drive 90 miles an hour to Hartford to the recording studio where I had some tapes at Doug's studio of my playing. And I
Yeah.
offloaded 3 of the bluesiest, uh, you know, pieces that showed I'm a soulful white guy. And
Wait, how old are you, Jeff?
now or then? No, then, right? I was 26. I think I was 26.
Okay.
Although I'm getting older by the end of this story. Um, so I get back in the car, drive 90 miles an hour. I mean, it's probably a 75-minute show, right? And it's 40 miles. Anyway, I pull around the corner just as the door is just about closing, and I hand the cassette through the door that's almost closing. And Clifford, here's my tape. And he calls me the next day to audition, and I got the gig.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And what was your personal relationship with Ray Charles like? What was that?
Well, admittedly, when you're working with someone who you don't have the same type of communication with eyes, that makes it more challenging.
Absolutely.
But I will say this, very soon from starting to work with him, he would often turn around when I would play a certain well-placed blues note and turn around and he'd go, "Oh, you nasty boy." And oh my God, talk about grasshopper and the master.
Wow.
Epiphany of like, oh my God.
Wow.
If I was like talking to myself, did you see what just happened?
Or is any of that recorded where a moment like that
Well,
happened?
yeah. If you go to Ray Charles and Jeff Pevar on YouTube,
I
there's
saw a couple today.
there's a couple, but there's this one ballad called "All I Want to Do Is Lay Around and Love on You," and it's a ballad, and he gives me a lot of room to play, and you could, there's a solo in the middle that you could see him like, ah, whoa, and there's also towards the end of the tune where he's singing and I'm kind of answering him, and you could hear him. Oh, ah. It was so beautiful because like some people you could play and you have no idea if it's working.
Yeah.
But with him, he was such a litmus paper, and he was so emotional and he loved the blues. But he actually asked me if I would come out to his recording studio, and I ended up recording on a Christmas record. He got the Jewish guitar player from Connecticut to come out, a Christmas record called "The Spirit of Christmas." So I play on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and "What Child Is This?" And it was just him and me in the studio, and he would turn on the tape. He did all the tape op. He would let me play through the whole tune, and then he'd come back and he goes, "This, I like this right here, but here, could you go, boop, beep, boop, beep, beep?" I go, "Sure." And I'd go, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Yeah, just like that. Okay, cool. And then we'd go down the whole tune and we'd work together like that.
Paul Rowland just said, ask about Ray's advice about how many notes to play.
Right. Well, that's it. Hi, Paul. Paul and I go way back, and he knows this story. So when I was
Duffy Walden sing "Hey" also right now. Yeah.
Well, when I was in the studio with Ray, I actually took a little cassette player to record some of our banter, and I have this piece of audio.
Yeah.
I'll kind of give it to you the way that I remember it, but I have it.
Okay.
I learned one thing from a man who's dead now, Basie, Count Basie. He said, he goes, "I learned it's not how many notes you play, it's what you got in each note." Such a beautiful piece of history, and I'm going to put on a record somewhere. I know that there's legalities involving this kind of stuff because but I think whatever, I do have it, and it was a fantastic piece of Grasshopper and the Master, and I learned early on, if I can move this guy, I must be doing something all right. And it's a great lesson. It's a great lesson that I continually use in my musicality when I am trying too hard, that it's not how many notes you play, it's what you got in each note.
And speaking of what you got in each note, how about playing us something, Jeff? Because we've got you standing there all this time and we haven't heard any music yet. And we've got some questions to ask after.
I'm not sure I can do this, I've only played guitar a little bit. And admittedly.
Tell us what you're going to play for us.
I will. Okay. Can we hear that all right?
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's interesting, as I've gotten to where I am now, my hands are starting to, not feel like they're 20 anymore. So I'm kind of dealing with that, and that's my kind of excuse. So if I tank in some of this stuff, then not warmed up, folks. So this song, there was a opportunity that after I had a chance to be introduced to David Crosby and Graham Nash at a show that I was playing with my friend Mark Cohn, and we were opening up for Crosby, Stills and Nash, and they were huge Mark Cohn fans, and they ended up coming up on our set. And then 3 shows into us opening up for Crosby, Stills and Nash, Crosby pulls me aside and he said, "Nash and I have been watching you, and we feel like you'd be the perfect addition to our duo when we're not working with Steven." Where I am so upset I didn't say, "Well, I don't know, Dave, I've got some club dates back in But I didn't. My jaw dropped to the floor, and as time moved forward, we ended up doing some tours together as a trio. And I will say, to their credit, I asked permission if the ad could include my name, which was kind of a ballsy thing to do, but there's only 3 guys on stage, right? So I said, put it in small letters. But you do that for me? And they did. So God bless them. They're amazing people, and actually each one is a number of people. And I owe them so much gratitude, and I love them dearly, and I learned so much playing music with them. But to get back to this song, David ended up becoming was contacted by his son that he never met, and it's a longer story, and I won't go into that whole thing. But James Raymond is an amazing musician, and at that point in time, when I was working with Crosby and Nash, James and David were reunited, and David played me some of James's music and asked me if I would be interested in putting a band together with his son. So to have the opportunity to be a voyeur and an assistant in a father and son reunion was phenomenal, especially because James is a badass. I mean, he really is. He's a genius, you know. And you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. Well, the first CPR record was a combination of a lot of different things where we would get together and we would write different ways. And there's one song where I had lyrics and I would email it to David. You know, we came up with a rock and roll tune where I wrote 2 lines, he wrote 2 lines, blah, blah, blah. Well, this one is a song from the first CPR record that was pre-existing lyrics. And in fact, David even threw it out to CSN, and there's a version of that recorded, which, as David puts it, it was never finished. You know, it was like it was a jam, and he sang these lyrics, but it was never realized until he said, when I came in and put the music to the song, it was what was supposed to happen with these lyrics. So the name of the song is Little Blind Fish. It's the very first song I ever wrote with David Crosby. It's on the first CPR record, and I will attempt to sing it. Water. Little blind fish in a wide river, saying, who is the gift? Who is the giver? Is it a matter of choice where you go? Does it give you a voice just to know that you're here? That you're here. That you're here. That you're here. Little blind fish staring at a mirror, saying, how far can you see? Are you getting any nearer? Little blind bird sitting in a tree, saying, this is the end now. Can't you see? It's all gone. it's all gone. It's all gone, solid gone. Little blind fox sitting in a box, saying this is an open space and it has no locks. Tattered old lion living in a cage, bit off his own leg in a rage, in a rage, in a rage. No rain, oh. Little blind fish in a wide river, saying who's the gift, who is the giver? Is it a matter of choice where you go? Does it give you a voice just to know that you're here, that you're here, that you're here?
Oh God, Jeff.
Oh.
Oh God. You know, so while we're here, I want to go back and ask you about Laura Nyro, and I want to ask you about Rickie Lee, but we're here and we're talking about David. And, you know, I recently saw the documentary, and David was talking about being estranged from pretty much every person on the planet. So how you've maintained a relationship with David through everything, correct?
Well, there was a period of time where there was a bit of a gap. I mean, we've maintained friendship, but we didn't play music together for a period of time. And it was, at first, it really took some toll on my spirit because I love the man. And we put a lot of energy into music together. But it ended up being the best thing that could ever happen, because I ended up, you know, as the saying goes, when one door closes, other doors open.
Right.
And sometimes you need to get eked out of a nest of comfort area to persevere in areas that you need to. And I almost feel like, if there's such a thing as my guardian angels, they were like, dude, you need to like not be doing this for the rest of your life. You need to do your own records. And so, I mean, I ended up doing my own record. I did the Jazz is Dead record. You know, Phil Lesh and friends, they called me to do that. And on the heels of that, I got a phone call from a guy who said, you know, there's this band called Jazz is Dead with Rod Morgenstein, T. Levitz from the Dregs, Alfonso Johnson from Weather Report. Are you interested in the gig? And I'm like, oh my God, where do I go audition? And he says, you don't audition, you got the gig if you want it. It's like, what? So, you know, all these opportunities happened, this domino effect, you know, where I guess, you know, people hear things that they like and they take a chance, of course, you know, it's because nothing's guaranteed. But I ended up, you know, playing with these gentlemen who were heroes of mine, and I ended up taking a lot of responsibility and working on arrangements, and I actually took most of them into the studio and with my own dime put a Jazz is Dead record together of music that I mainly arranged myself, but with the help of, you know, of them too. And their mark on it is ridiculous. And we got a special guests like Luis Conte and Bill Evans on sax, and you know, Jerry Goodman on violin. And, you know, I'm so proud of that record. It's ridiculous. It's like,
Fantastic.
it's bucket list, you know. So to get a chance to play with a lot of these heroes, they made me play above my abilities. And that was a real epiphany for me, when, you know, because it's very easy for us to kind of think, well, I don't know if I'm good enough, or I don't know if I could, you know, cut it, but I want to. And I did a pretty good job. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of what came out, and it made a lot of people happy. So, you know, I think, you know, if I could encourage everyone and anyone who has a dream that they're not really sure if they could do it or not, don't listen to that. Just until you prove that you can't, assume you can. And
We were
just,
talking about this last night, Jeff, about the people who about saying yes to everything. It's just saying yes to everything.
yeah.
What do we have?
Learn how to do it. How do you learn how to do it? You say yes and go, okay, how do I do a film score? All right. And I did a film score. I had no idea how to do it. And you learn on the job training, you know? So,
Have you had any regrets? I mean, is there anything that you said yes to? You're like, oh my God, why did I do that? No, right? Because you learned something with everything.
never.
Okay, so let's roll it back. So Rickie Lee Jones, first big Alfred. You must know Alfred Johnson. I assume
I
you know.
certainly know who he is, and I've met him. Yeah. And he wrote Company, didn't he? I think he wrote that song.
I don't know.
He may have.
I do know that he worked with Rickie and still does.
I believe that he wrote that song. I could be wrong, but I have met him. The band, well, I got the gig because of my dear childhood friend Michael Ruff, who was a genius 15-year-old jazz.
Okay, so how did you know? How did you and Michael know each other? How did that relationship start?
I was going. There was a period of time where I went to live with my father because my mother had gotten ill from depression, and living in Manchester and going to school there. Michael was attending school there, and a ensemble had formed where I was playing with Michael as well as jamming with other musicians, and Michael and I just became soulmates very early on. Interestingly enough, talk about bonding. Both of our mothers were in the same facility, because they were both divorcees who had manic depression. So I remember visiting both of our mothers. This is the first time, the door closed and the door was locked, because, she was receiving treatment, and we just went out to his car and hugged and cried. Michael called me in 1983 saying Rickie Lee Jones is auditioning guitar players, and if you want to pay your own way out, I will get you an audition. And all the musicians on that tour were very established. Tony Bronigal on drums, Bonnie Raitt, and Reggie
Tony
McBride.
did the show.
Reggie McBride on bass. Stevie Wonder. So I ended up doing the audition, and I actually was so nervous that I didn't do very well. But I was staying at Michael's house on his couch, and he said, "Stay in town, keep working on this stuff." And about a week later, after working on it every day, he said, "Come in, and this isn't an audition, it's just a rehearsal." And he just kept me there. And then the day that Rickie came in, I was, rehearsing with the band, and she puts on a guitar. It was Weasel and the White Boys Cool. I don't know if you know that tune. Ding, 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 ding. And she's walking over to me with her guitar. Ding, ding. And she's walking closer and closer. And all of a sudden, she put her head next to mine. And I'm flipping out. I'm like, oh my God. All right, Jeff, just relax. Just relax. It's all going to be fun. And, we bonded and did that tour. This is 1983. So the band that I was playing with replaced me. I did a 7-week tour playing, in huge places. We played Red Rocks. It was my first time playing at Red Rocks. Oh, I felt like I was looking, if you're standing on the stage at Red Rocks and looking out, you have the rocks on every side, on either side. It's like the inside of an eyeball looking at heaven. That's what I was kind of feeling. I was just, convulsing with joy. And anyway, after the 7 weeks of working with Rickie, I came home to no work. So it was, the band that I was playing with replaced me, and I was scuffling, and it was so interesting how it could go so high and then so low. But it was a great lesson in regards to, okay, so note to self, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's just.
But no regret going with Rickie and giving up the gig.
No. I would never say that. It was an amazing opportunity, and we ended up working together numerous times after that. And she's an unbelievable musician and a very interesting person.
I was at one of the Christmas parties a couple years ago, and Postell was there, and she had this whole jam on.
Cool.
She's amazing, yeah.
Oh my God, she's one of the best ever. I mean, there's very few people that make me weep when they sing, and she just totally hits me. So I'm so grateful to her. It's very interesting the type of musicians I've been able to, dare I say, manifest, whether it's Rickie or Ray Charles or. I've really, whatever sights or guardian angels have kind of led me to these places have been really profound musicians. Mark Cohn.
And after Rickie, didn't you do an album with James Taylor?
I ended up working on a couple songs and was hoping I would go out on tour, but he knows a few guitar players. So, but yeah, there was a bunch of things going on around that time. Working with Ray kind of happened like the next year after working with Rickie, and Joe Cocker shortly after that. And
tell me about that. Tell me how did you get the Cocker gig? And
okay, well, Michael Lang was Rickie's manager at one point. I think it was the second tour that I did with Rickie, and then Michael was Joe's manager as well. So they had this band, which was T.M. Stevens, David Beal, Jeff Levine on keyboards, Danny Lewis on keyboards and horn, Marty Kursick. It was great players. Phil Grande was the guitar player, and Phil had gone through some challenging times with alcohol. And Michael was kind of, honest with me. He said, look, Phil is the guy. He's the lead guitar player. He played on the new record, but we're going to be doing a lot of other material from Joe's past. So there'll be room for you to play lead too. And in a way, it makes me feel like a little insurance just in case anything happens with Phil, that you're there. I said, great, let's do it. So I ended up touring with Joe for about a year, and Joe was so enamored with Ray Charles. And we would often hang out after gigs, and he even wrote on my tour book, "You, me, and Ray Charles." But he was so sweet, such a kind man, a mensch. And so that was an amazing opportunity.
That must have been right around the time. No, it's way after the time. I was thinking that was around the time that Belushi was doing him all the time. It was after that, though, wasn't it?
I'm guessing. I don't know how far he was doing him, but I know there was an imitation going on. Yeah.
Yeah. They actually did dueling Joe Cockers on Saturday Night Live, which was beyond hysterical.
Well, I kind of heard. This could be wrong. That Joe didn't know. Joe didn't know that was going to happen. That I could be wrong, and it would be something to look up. That I think Joe was a little surprised that she was taking it that far out, but maybe not. I don't know. You know how rumors get sent.
All right, that's an interesting story.
But anyway.
So, all right. So, okay. So Joe Cocker. Wow. Yeah. So,
and we didn't talk about Mark Cohn, because Mark Cohn was.
Let's talk about Mark.
Yeah. So really, that was kind of a game changer for me.
How did you meet?
Actually, I had done a little bit of work with James Taylor, and been in the studio with him, so James knew of me. Actually, I think it was before I was in the studio with him. I actually was recommended to him, and we met at the Caridad in New York. It had black beans and yellow rice together.
I
And
love, they that just closed. It just closed like a couple months ago.
bummer. I had gotten a tape to him of my original material that I did at that recording studio, at Doug Cupper's recording studio. And a friend, his personal secretary I was introduced to, and we were friends. And I gave her a tape, and she said, "Do you mind if I give this to James Taylor?" I go, "No, I don't mind." And she called me and said, "James loves your tape, and he wants to meet you." So we met, and shortly thereafter, James is a very gregarious guy, and he's very sweet and very, he encourages musicians, And so Mark Hone had moved to town, and his wife at the time knew, had an in to James, and got James some of his early music. And James said, "This is really good. You should put together a band." And I know of a really good guitar player in town, Jeff Pevar. So that's how I got the gig with Mark Hone. Again, the domino effect. You just never know how it's all happening. So I ended up playing on some of Mark's early demos. And then when he was putting his tour together, we ended up touring just as a duo, which was such an amazing opportunity for me, because all the other touring I had done up till then was with larger bands. And when you're playing intimately like that, Mark is so ridiculously talented, and he's such a great performer. It reminded me when I saw Bruce Springsteen of the same type of endearing, relaxed feeling you go when you enter a concert, and it feels like a living room instead of a concert. And Mark does that. He has this bedside manner that's so warm and funny and interesting. And so I learned so much working with him. And there were times when I was the only guitar player and he was just singing, or there was times when I was just playing bass and he was singing. And I had never been on a concert stage where it was that naked. So, and that's how Graham and David were introduced to me, because I was opening up for them with Mark.
Okay, so let's talk about, so how did you leave Mark to go do that?
I said, "Mark, I don't know. And I love you. And, let's do some music down the road. I have this opportunity, and I've got to follow it." And he, what's he going to do? I mean, he understood.
Say no to that, yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting because I remember being on the tour bus with Mark, and we were listening to Crosby, Stills, and Nash together, So anyway, it just unfolded, and you just never know how the domino is going to fall, and an opportunity comes around, So
tell, I from Laura Nyro, I mean, that just blows my mind that you played with Laura. I adored, worshiped Laura Nyro. What was that like? What was she like? How did that happen?
So basically my tenure with Laura was just working a couple days in the studio with her. I have a very dear friend who's a musician, does his own records and produces. His name is Peter Galway. And I had been doing a bunch of projects for Peter that he was producing. He was producing Cliff Eberhardt.
I know him very well.
Yeah. The record that he did for Windham Hill that had Richie Havens. So I played on that record with Cliff. And so Peter had gotten asked to produce a couple songs on Laura's last record. And so it was Chris Parker on drums, I think Zev Katz on bass, myself and Laura. We were tracking with quartet, and she was on piano and singing. And what an honor,
What a voice.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that. I wish I had more time to kind of get to know her. It was just, kind of do the session and bye.
Well, you got to do the session and do that. So how about Bette Midler? That was more recent. What was that like?
Yeah. My dear friend who was filling in for Ray Charles that night, Morris Pleasure, he was filling in on guitar, Morris and I became very close as the years went on, and Morris was, well, just to give you some background with Morris, Morris played with Earth, Wind and Fire. He was their band leader, playing keyboards and double bass with Verdine. There's some YouTubes of the two of them, like at the edge of the stage, just killing it on the bass together. Morris played with Natalie Cole. He played with, David Foster, and he actually got me.
I was going to say you played with David Foster as well.
Because of Morris. Morris recommended me. Our dear friend Tariq Akoni couldn't make one of the tours in Asia, and so I went to Asia with David Foster, and it was Philip Bailey singing Earth, Wind and Fire songs, and it was there was a number of different singers on that who were all big stars. My names are, but anyway, we were talking about Bette Midler. So I'm on tour once again with Mark Cohn. But I'm so thrilled that he called me back, to do some more gigs with him. Mm-hmm. And I was coming into New York City, and because Mark and I were playing, and I just happened to call Morris just to say hi. Mm-hmm. Where are you? And he goes, "Oh, I have some news for you. I'm in New York." I go, "Really? I'm just getting to New York." He goes, "Well, I'll tell you when I see it, but I might have a band leading gig. I'm very excited about it, but I can't say anything." And I said, "All right, well, I'm staying at the blah, blah, blah hotel." And he's like, "That's where I'm staying." I said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. So we meet in the bar like an hour later, and he said, "I just spent the day with Bette Midler. I think I have the gig. And if I have the gig, I'm going to get you on the gig." And I'm like, "Oh, whoa. I'm sure she has plenty of musicians she would, work with." He goes, No. If I get this gig, I'm going to get you on this gig." Wow. So myself and Tariq Akoni, who is just a genius guitar player and a beautiful man, the two of us played guitar for Bette. To answer your question about Bette, I mean, what a talent and a force in nature. I mean, it's like
she brings it like 1,000,000% every night, right? Like every night.
She's not possessed, but it's like being possessed. It's like when you have that much talent and you have that much chutzpah. She's a badass, and I love her. And you do not fuck with that woman. She will. Yeah, she's a badass.
Did you ever get into it with her?
There was one time.
Ooh, a
rehearsal. No, well, there was one time during a rehearsal where there was a song that I was playing the lead solo, and I learned the lead solo from the record. Mm-hmm. That's the respectful thing to do.
Right.
And after the song stopped, she said, "Jeffrey, I expect my musicians to play. I don't need you to play the solo from the record." And I was like, "Oh my God." I would prefer to play my own solo, but I just did it because I just assumed that was, the right thing to do.
Right.
I called her band leader or her assistant, and I just said, "I'm sorry if I created a problem or whatever." And she goes, "No, don't worry about it." Well, to Bette's credit, the next day I get to rehearsal, and she, just as she's getting ready, she goes, "Oh, by the way, Jeffrey, I'm really sorry I yelled at you last night." So. Look, everybody has their days, People are just people.
That's very cool, though, that she was humble enough to apologize.
Really?
She's the only person I ever did standing room only to see her do Hello, Dolly a few years ago.
Is that great?
She was.
Yeah.
But forget about it. I wouldn't stand for anybody in a Broadway, but it was worth every minute.
She's a force of nature. And the way that she commands the stage and the way that she walks into the room, it's humbling. It's beautiful. And I'm honored that I had a chance to work with her. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about big personalities, what was it like to play with Meatloaf?
Well, admittedly, there's a producer named Russ Titleman, and Russ worked on many of my favorite records. And Russ called me to play on a Meatloaf song. There was a best of Meatloaf record
Yeah.
and they decided to put on a new song, or maybe more than one new song. But I never met Meatloaf. He was not there. I was just working with Russ, and so it is part of my legacy as far as discography. But as far
Yeah.
as but I'm not a vegetarian, so there are times when it's horrible.
And how about Carly Simon? When did you work with
Oh,
Carly?
God, she's another force of nature. She's so sweet, and so let's see here.
So
I
wait, is it true that Carly doesn't like to play out, that she's nervous playing out live? Is that true?
Well, to give you the background, because I met her through playing with Jimmy Webb. Jimmy Webb, as you and others may or may not know, is one of the iconic American songwriters.
I saw him at Carnegie Hall, actually.
Say again?
Years. I saw him at Carnegie Hall a million years ago.
Nice. So we're talking, the all of Glenn Campbell's big hits. By the time I get to Phoenix, Galveston, yeah, the list goes on and on, up and away, and there's so many tunes. Girl, I heard you getting married.
Did
I
you
mean,
write that really
yeah,
for the
yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge? I didn't know that.
So I ended up being in a band of New York players celebrating the music of Jimmy Webb at Lincoln Center, also featuring Glenn Campbell and
No, that's where I was. I was there. I was at that show.
Okay.
Oh my God, you were on that show.
Was.
Wow.
Yeah. And so interestingly, Jimmy was producing a record for Carly called Film Noir. And Carly has a guitar player that she's been working with for many years, who's a phenomenal player and a fantastic acoustic player. And I called Jimmy knowing that record was going on. And I said, Jimmy, I just want to tell you that you might not know that I play mandolin and lap steel in case anything comes up. He goes, you play mandolin? He goes, I got a tune. I want you to come down, blah, blah, blah. So there's a song on the record, Lily Marlene. And just a fun little piece of historic musical tidbit, right? So we're in the studio, and the song is an iconic song from the 40s or 50s, or I would say 40s. And so they call this man to play accordion. They find the guy who's like the guy in New York. His name is Luis Cortese or something. And Luis shows up with his thing, not knowing what song. And so what song are we playing? They said, well, we're going to do Lily Marlene. And he sits down in the chair and he goes, I've got a great story. The last time I played this song, I was in the infantry in the Second World War. I had my squeeze box and I was, playing, and all the officers found out that I was playing this instrument. So I was getting employed by the highest ranking officers to come to their dinners. And like when the highest ranking officer was dating a woman, he was hired to like play in the other room, right? So that was his gig, right? So all of a sudden he gets a phone call while he's out on the field one day, get your squeeze box. They put him next to the phone, and it's General Eisenhower, who is requesting Lily Marlene.
Oh my
The last time I played this song, I played it for Eisenhower over a field phone. So,
God.
all right. So we were all just like had goosebumps. But yeah, so I played mandolin on that song, and then there was one other song that I ended up playing live on TV with Carly and Jimmy. That the song is called "Spring Will Be a Little Late This Year," and it's a ballad. Spring will be a little late this year. It's just a beautiful kind of.
I know that song. Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
singing it well, but it's that kind of a romantic thing. Jimmy goes, I am envisioning you playing a guitar solo with the biggest guitar amp ever made in the middle of it. So it's like such a juxtaposition, almost kind of like
Right.
a Queen guitar type solo, and because I'm not a reader, I said to Jimmy, I'm not really a great reader. He goes, oh, well, I'll sing it to you, and he sang me the solo, and I played it, and then we ended up playing Rosie O'Donnell show and
Right.
one other show. CBS on the Roof or something like that. But anyway, I did 2 TV shows with the 2 of them. There they are playing this ballad, and then all of a sudden, it's
God, that's so crazy.
it's online somewhere. Spring will be a little late.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how about Loggins and Messina? How did that happen?
Let's see here. I ended up meeting them. I had been a huge fan. I loved their stuff. In fact, a dear friend of mine, Buck Pitts, and I share a birthday. His favorite band was Poco. My favorite band at the time was Loggins Messina. They were playing at in New York on Long Island, whatever the big Coliseum was, Nassau Coliseum.
Uh-huh.
Nassau Coliseum, right? We decided to go a night early and just have a bro date, if you will. I mean, we're dear friends, a bro hang. And it was the morning of, and I said, why don't we go down to the venue? And we parked the car, and one of the doors was ajar. And we walk in, and, so I'm walking in, and some guy comes up to me and goes, hey, what are you guys doing here? Are you guys with Clare Brothers? And I said, yeah, that's who we're with, Clare Brothers. He said, all right, well, the truck should be here in a few minutes. Why don't you get some donuts and coffee? So we go down and have some donuts and coffee. The trucks show up. We help unload. We hang out all day long. They gave us 2 meal tickets, which was right around the time that we took the mushrooms. And then we watched the show. The opening band was Poco, and he was in Glory, and the other band was Loggins and Messina. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, that they've been a little bit ingrained in my consciousness,
Right.
But
What year? Approximately what year was that?
good question. Oh God, I'd have to do some investigating.
Okay. Approximately.
I'm so horrible with this stuff.
But you were like how old? You were like,
All right, good. That's reasonable.
yeah.
Mid-20s.
Okay.
70s.
Yeah. Okay.
Late 70s, early 80s. I'm going to guess. I don't know. I can't even keep track of what happened yesterday, So I ended up meeting Jimmy and Kenny because I was living in Santa Barbara. I think that was, I'm trying to remember all this stuff. But I ended up doing some work with Kenny, and he ended up starting to call
Just
me.
wrote 72. I don't know if that's true, but he's telling you it was 72.
All right, there you go. Good. Yeah, because it's online. And if you go Loggins and Messina, Nassau Coliseum, who wrote that?
Paul Rowland.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Newt. We call each other Newt. I don't know why. I'm sure he started it. So anyway, yeah, I started doing sessions for Kenny. He would hire me to, do some session work. And in fact, I'm so excited. I'm working on a Jeff Pevar second record.
Nice.
And he and I were recording a bunch of songs, just the 2 of us, and I was kind of helping arrange with him. And we have this beautiful rendition of the Beach Boys, God Only Knows. And he ended up not using it, and I asked him if I could get the tracks. And he said, yeah, you can get them. So that's going to be on.
Wow.
It's kind of the 2 of us, and is another amazing musician is Jesse Siebenberg, who's a fantastic producer. Put some tracks on there too, but oh my God, it's so gorgeous. So
I can't wait to hear that.
I was so honored, that these guys who were my big heroes, and I was on tour with Crosby, Stills and Nash, and we had a night off in Boston, and I called Kenny and I said, "Hey man, I'm here and I've got a lap steel. Any chance I could sit in?" I mean, I'm so ballsy.
It's great.
He said, "Yeah, bring the lap steel." And so I did. They did on that tour. They did a set where they had a general store theme and they were doing all these kind of acousticy things. So I played on "Kind Woman" and "You Better Think Twice," I think it was, and a couple other things. And it was no rehearsal. They just
Wow. Speaking of lap steel, did you tell me you're going to play something for us?
oh, okay. Well, I have a slide guitar.
With a slide guitar will do. That will we'll be very happy to hear that.
You know, I kind of feel like I've just been talking nonstop, but I guess that's what these things are, right?
Well, you're giving us all the stories. That's what we want to hear.
Fun. I gotta say, I'm proud of the escapades, and if I could be of inspiration to anyone to following their dreams, I guess that's because
All about.
yeah, I'd like to think that I'm a humble guy. I don't like to brag, but I'm just proud of the stuff that's happened.
You're not bragging. You're telling us your story, and it just so happens that your story has some great stuff in it. This show was originally called "The Road Taken" because it was about how people have managed to merge creativity and commerce and followed their dream, which is exactly what you've done. So
Well, thank you.
you're right on mark.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. All right, let me plug this thing in. So, I don't just play songs that I've written with David Crosby, but today that's what I'm playing. And so this particular song, it's kind of an interesting story. So when David Crosby and Graham Nash were still talking to one another, and I say that just because I'm sad, and I pray they will be again, because I love them dearly, and I know that they love each other, even though, relationships get strained sometimes. And anyway, I got asked to play on I think it's their last record together. And I ended up playing a number of instruments on it, as well as I have a song on there, which isn't the one that I'm playing, but just to tell you the story because I'm proud of it. David and Graham would often be involved with causes, raising money, battered women causes, benefits. They did a lot of that kind of work, and they would call me to come play, and they would pay me to come play, but they would basically donate their services, and it was just what an honor. We ended up doing a gig on the Mall in Washington. Aretha Franklin played. There was all these different people, but the night before the gig, Graham said, "I've got this melody." And it's this thing about the Corcovado, the Jesus of Rio. And he sang me this melody, and immediately I came up with some chords for it. And we didn't finish it at that point, but then I heard they were going to do a record. So I got very proactive to being in touch with him and sending him ideas. And I send me the lyrics and blah, blah, blah. And then I'd send him a little recording of the next version and this and that. And we got the tune together and we recorded it for the record. And who did they get to sing background vocals on it but James Taylor?
Oh.
James, so it's Jesus of Rio, song written by Jeff Pevar and Graham Nash. And I'm not playing it, but I had to tell you this story just because it's one of those bucket list things, It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. How did I get so lucky? Anyway, this song is on that record, but it's not this version. And the reason why I say that is because David, when we were working on the Crosby Nash tour, actually it was the Graham Nash tour, I was working with another phenomenal guitar player named Dean Parks, who's very, very happening. I mean, he's a very in demand. His discography is like as long as 20 people's arms. I mean, he played on everything, Steely Dan, I mean, you name it. Fantastic musician. Well, when they were working on music for this record, David gave Dean and me these lyrics and asked each of us to come up with a version. Wow. And David found Dean's version more appealing to him, which was awesome. But this is my version of that song.
Wow.
And I said to David, I said to David, look, I have a version. He goes, that's awesome. Do it. We both wrote a song with these lyrics. And so why not? It was interesting because being a musician who's, playing with people's heroes, dare I say, sometimes people reach out to you on the internet, and there was the name of this song is called Charlie, and this guy named Charlie was writing me for a while, which had nothing to do with the lyrics of this song, but it has to do with this feeling that I have when I sing it. He was writing me and just being an amazingly sensitive guy and this and that. And I heard at some point that they found him in his apartment and he had taken his own life.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I sing this for Charlie every time I play this song. So this is David's lyrics called Charlie, and David and Jeff's version versus David and Dean's version. Charlie was a message from a higher place, waiting for delivery, could see it in his face. Charlie was a cloud lamp, held the wind in his hands. He flew like a raindrop, didn't like to land. Charlie was a vision stuck to your mind, like the arrow of love stuck in the face of time. Charlie had a dark friend, the best friend he ever had. He didn't understand good, he didn't know about bad. Good is a concept, like a loaf of bread, feeds the living while saying grace for the dead. Take a rainbow to dinner, take a rainbow to bed. Chew your food and feed your head. Fingers. Charlie was eating food for thought. It was the best damn meal that he ever got. Feeling ethereal, he floated away. He never worried, he did it twice a day. 3 times on Saturday, if it suited his mood. Charlie sure was an ethereal dude. He'd come home on Sunday and plant a kiss on the top of your head, just like this. Charlie was a message from to your I'm sorry. Charlie was a message from a higher place, waiting for delivery, could see it in his face. Charlie was a cloudman, held the wind in his hands. He flew like a raindrop, didn't like to land. Flew like a raindrop, didn't like to land.
Oh my God, you know, slide guitar is like my favorite thing. That was so fabulous, Jeff. I love that. I can't even imagine what Team Parks' version sounds like because I love that one, but I'm going to go find it.
Oops, I just unplugged my headphones. 1 second.
No problem. When you can hear me, by the way, I have some messages for you. So Paul said he was wrong. It wasn't 72, it was 76. Because Gigi corrected him, and Gigi wants to send you her love. Oh. And Rich Sucks wanted to say hello to you. There's so many people that are sending you love.
Thank you, everybody. I'm so touched. Thank you.
So Jeff, before we go, I could ask you. I have to ask you about Shaka. So what was that like?
All right. Well. Again, you know, some of these experiences are devoid of the connection because while I was living in New York, I got a call from a woman named B.B. Green who was the man who was producing Chaka at the time. I'm having a brain fart. And that, you know, that's what's a little scary when, although I was having these my whole life. I'm not,
Me too. They're not senior moments. Wasn't Michael Ruff her MD? And
well, that's true, and that was different. Marcus Miller, sorry. So B.B. Green was Marcus Miller's assistant, and she said, we have a recording session for you for ChakaCon. So I showed up, and there's Marcus and me, just the two of us in the studio together. And he's sitting, you know, right across from me and letting me kind of do what I do. And it was interesting because at one point I went for a wah-wah thing, and he goes, I know for a fact she does not like wah-wah, but the way that you're playing it, I have a feeling she might like this. And it did make the record. So even that for me was, you know, kind of a cool thing, you know, because, you know, wah-wah can be very style. It just kind of.
I happen to love the wah-wah. I love the wah-wah.
Well,
somebody asked, by the way, if you're still friends with Michael Ruff.
Oh, dear friends. And in fact, I did a gig with Michael. I right before COVID, Inger and I went out to visit our friends in Hawaii. And it ended up being a thing where we took a plane to Kauai, which I had never been to before. We spent time with my brother Tim, who I didn't realize was caretaking a property out there. So I stayed with Tim, who I adore. And so I contacted Michael, and he said, well, I'm doing a Friday night gig. I'll get an amp for you if you want to play. I was like, yes, please. I love Michael. He is my brother. You know, there's certain people. I mean, when I met Michael, my musical abilities were kind of in this little circle, and it's like he kind of opened up like an egg, this little circle, and gave me this perspective of like, what is even possible. He said something to me so early on that it took me years to understand it. He said to me, you know, Jeff, I see you trying so hard. You know, you don't have to try so hard. Wow. Just accept that you have the gift. Now, I like to look at it as you don't have to try so hard if you get out of your ego and allow the gift to come through you. So in a way, yeah, I guess, you know, you do a certain amount of work to where you can embody the gift on a certain level to where it's kind of like when you learn vocabulary. I mean, here we are using thousands of words to convey a thought. And, when you work on music, you do the same thing. You create your vocabulary and a place to communicate your feelings. And so to me, I don't like to feel that we're all that responsible for greatness, if you will, or aspiring to greatness, or aspiring to play above your head, above your ability. That in fact, if you get out of the way, that the muse kind of comes into play and something more powerful than your intention happens.
Jeff, I think that happens with everything in life. It's not just music, it's not just art. It's when we get out of the way in relationships, when we get out of the way with everything and just let go. Yep. Somebody said something great the other night, that if my hands are like this and I'm hanging on to something and trying to control it, there's no room for anything to come in. But as soon as I go like this, there's space here.
Perfect. Exactly. So, yeah. So Michael, his musicality at 15 and 16 was just 18 or whatever. It was unbelievable. It was like a 50 or 60-year-old jazz master. So when someone has that type of message to convey, you listen. And he besides the fact that he got me the first gig with Rickie and kind of really pulled the strings, to kind of go, I know you have it in you. You're just frightened, and you just stick it out. If you want it, you get it, and so he did me a real solid then, and he has forever kind of emblazoned his support and love to me as a brother, So yes, I do stand.
Brothers, and Rickie's memoir is coming out very soon, and I have a feeling that your name will most definitely, I'm guessing, will be in there. I would think. But speaking of brothers, so we talked about this before we came on the air, but I had no idea that you played with Cooch so much, and yeah, there's so much music of you guys on YouTube, tons.
Well, Danny moved to Connecticut where I was living because his daughter was living there, and like any father, from my understanding, a marriage that no longer was, made it a priority to be around his family. And I think, you seek out other kindred spirits who are talented when you live in a certain area and you're kind of somewhat sequestered, if you will. And I have been a fan of his for a long time, and I kind of knew at some point that maybe our paths would cross. And so I definitely seeked him out too. And we did a few shows where it was just the two of us. I've been doing a few solo gigs where I'll implement the use of a looper, not so much in the traditional sense where you sit and watch someone play something and then they press a button and then it comes out the same thing and then you play over it, although sometimes that. But, rather than put people through that agony of, all right, here's the first part, and now here's the second part. I just would pre-record some things. So, being a producer, being a multi-instrumentalist, I love to play bass and percussion. And so we got together and put some tracks together, and, very minimal. So the two of us could be two guitar players who could go out and maybe play some songs, just two guitars, but then some songs that had a rhythm feel, and we could play a bunch of his songs. So I brought him to a number of places, one in Maine, and a couple other places where we did shows together as a duo. And there was one that we did that's online. There's a guy named Don Odell who does basically tapes you for free, and you just play his place, and he gives you the video, and he gave me the audio, and I had a chance to mix it. And so whatever was happening sounded a little better than just this is what was on the camera, So there was a bunch of those gigs. I played Infinity Hall with him. So I love Danny Kortchmar. He is such a classic guitar player, and such a wonderful musician.
And a brilliant songwriter. I mean, a brilliant songwriter.
Agreed. So, and he's working with my dear pal, Steve Postell.
And Steve Postell, and also you've played with Lee, you've played with Russ. I mean, the whole immediate family, but you and Steve really go back tightly a long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, when I moved to New York, we found each other early on, and Steve saw me play in Greenwich Village, and immediately asked me if I would join his band. And so we were rehearsing up in his apartment on, where was it, 50s or something like that. 70s. Anyway, and we did all kinds of gigs together. I played out.
I met you. You guys played at my club. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah. He had, numerous bands, Little Blue, and I play on most of those records, on a few cuts or here or there. But we've done gigs together. He brought me out to Colorado for years, and he's just my bro, and I'm so proud of him and the work that he's doing with the immediate family. It's such a perfect marriage, if you will, how these iconic musicians are all working together, and how Steve brings the whole package perfectly, unites it. It's kind of like the kind of the corrals all the
conduit. Is that the right word?
Conduit, and corrals all the energy, because he's a fantastic arranger and businessman and singer and guitar.
Of an angel.
Yeah, I love him. We're dear friends for many, many years, and he's brought a lot of different opportunities to me that I'm very grateful for.
Wonderful. So okay, so before we go, From the Core, you got your first solo album.
Right.
Tell everybody how that happened and where that is and what that is.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to abbreviate it slightly, because it's kind of a living out here. A friend of mine inquired if a friend of mine named Greg Frederick was producing a PBS special on the Oregon Caves National Monument, which is a caves that was discovered from, I think, a natural cave that was created by water leaching into limestone and creating this vast cave system, which is, I think, a couple miles long and leads to this huge room called the Ghost Room. And Greg was contacted to do a PBS documentary on it, and asked me if I would be willing to put some guitar music together for it. And how that normally happens is, as you may know, they create the video, and he would go, okay, between, here and here, I need some music, and between here and here, and blah, blah, blah. So I agreed happily. He called me a few days later and said, listen, we have permission to record in the cave if you want to. And a voice pretty much said to me, yes, don't prepare anything. Just go to the cave. So I brought an acoustic guitar. In fact, the acoustic guitar I am playing, the first guitar that I played, that guitar, and a 8-string mandocello, and proceeded to, they brought in a Pro Tools rig, and my dear friend who lives here, Brett Levick, was running a Pro Tools rig that was solar powered, and they threw a couple mics up, and they perched me up on this rock in the Ghost Room, and I was basically, okay, first song, go. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to offer them kind of a potpourri of musical styles, something that's up and exciting, something mysterious, something that's bluesy, something. I'm going to do some varied tunings, because I love to play in varied tunings, influenced by Crosby and Joni and blah, blah, blah. So I just had no idea what I was going to play, but 12 pieces came out of all varying styles and varying tempos and directions, thinking this will give them a nice plethora to choose from, depending on what it is they're going to want.
Right.
So they sent me these 12 songs so I could edit, which was nice because maybe I start an introduction and then I'd go to something that took maybe a second to develop. So in the places where I felt like it was meandering, I could kind of take that little section out and find the real biscuit, the real crux. And I edited the 12 songs. Some of them are exactly the way that they went down. Some of them I added sections. So, but added like maybe repeating something that I had done there, right? Put those 12 songs out. They used 8 out of the 12. Then Greg called me and said they want to find out if you'd be interested in putting this CD out for sale at the Oregon Caves National Monument store. And I was like, yeah, but I need to do some stuff to it. It's kind of like a Christmas tree without any stuff on it. It works fine if someone's going, the Oregon Caves were discovered and blah, blah, blah. So I ended up going around my house, finding anything that I thought might fit this track. I took out an accordion, which I barely play, but when you have your own studio, you can play one chord at a time. Put your hands and then there's the next one. I played harmonica, I played mandolin, I played various instruments. And as the project went on, I got a few special guests, friends, a flautist on one who was playing with Rickie Lee Jones on the tour that I was doing, and 2 different violinists, a cellist. Well, when I was working with Rickie, there was one opportunity where we played as a duo, and who happened to be in the audience but John Anderson from Yes, who was playing the same club the next night. I didn't know he was there, but I had the next night off, and the man who owned the venue invited me to come and join him at his table and see the show. And at the end of the show, he said, "You want to come back and meet John?" I'm like, hell yeah. The first words out of John's mouth was, "Were you the guy playing guitar with Rickie Lee Jones last night?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I love the way you play. Here's my email. We got to work on something together," right? That was 2 years before this thing happened. And while I'm kind of, let's say, bringing these songs out from the original track by itself to their full birth, I thought, oh my God, if I could get John Anderson to sing on this song. So I put together an email on a Sunday morning.
Jeff, I'm sorry, I have a question for you that's apropos at the moment.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So he gives you his email.
Yes.
You're a dynamic, go for it, get it done kind of guy.
Yeah.
Do you connect with it? Do you send him an email? Do you connect right away and make that happen?
Like a day later, I said, "Hey, John, Jeff Pevar, really excited that you gave me your contact. When the time is right, you'll be hearing from me. I'm really looking forward to your invitation. Thank you." And maybe I'd written one other time just to say hi, or be in the area.
But I knew you didn't wait 2 years to make that in it. Yeah.
Correct. And it's a good question, and it's an important question for anyone who, gets an opportunity. You don't sit on the opportunity. You light the fire. You get it smoldering. And so 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning, when this one song, I thought, I had a title to it, River of Dreams, and I thought this would be a great, I could hear John singing on this thing. So I wrote him a message, and I decided to send 2 other pieces just so we could hear a little bit more of the diversity of the project, because this one tune is very, very simple. I said, "Listen, John, kind of, calling you on your opportunity to work on something. If you feel inspired, it could be scatting over it. It could be whatever you want." And I only have a title, River of Dreams. Well, 3 hours later, all 3 songs come back with harmonies, lyrics, and a letter saying, "You made my morning." Now, I have a wet spot under my chair, and I'm also realizing I can't feature the iconic singer John Anderson on 3 songs that is turning out to be a Jeff Pevar record. But I wrote him back and I said, "Look, if you're cool with it, I'd like to feature on the one song on this project, use the other ones for a future thing. And I'd also I just love what you did." He did there were 3 verses. He did 2 verses with no harmonies. The third verse he did 3-part harmonies. So I amended the song. I said, listen, I've created a 4th verse. Do you mind doing 3-part la-las? Because, John Anderson to me is la la la. I mean, he does that all day in my mind. We're just walking out the door, la la la. So he agreed to it, and I said I added a harmony on the 2nd verse. If you want to be the only singer, that's fine. And he wrote back. He said, no, I'm happy to do it. Your vocal sounds great. Blah blah blah. So the fact that this thing appeared, my dear brother Steve, who's here's a guy who graduated UConn with honors, went to Princeton, graduated Princeton with honors, has gone after his career, right?
Right.
He's one of my biggest supporters and has been saying, Jeff, when are you going to put out a record? Man, come on, you're so talented. And I would say, I know it's going to happen. I'm just waiting for the right opportunity, because I didn't want to put out yet another guitar player record. He plays the blues. He plays as fast as he can. There's so many cookie cutter guitar player records. I wanted to do something unique. And it was so cool that this thing fell into my lap. I had no idea it was going to turn into my first record. And by Greg calling me and saying, hey, they want to sell this thing. And he gave me all the songs to use, because sometimes when you're providing music, they own all that stuff. It's a buyout. But
Right.
he gave me all the rights to the songs, and I got John Anderson on it, and from the core. I'm so proud of it, because it's so left side of or unexpected direction for Jeff Pevar, that some people know as like, well, he really plays lead guitar, and it's all acoustic, and I use a fretless acoustic guitar actually to play a lot of the solos. And it was really nice to put out something unique, but it never hurts to have an iconic musician like John Anderson on the record. So,
Oh my God, it's so incredible. So people are asking, can they find your music on iTunes?
So here's the thing. We prefer that you find it at our website. And the reason is this. iTunes, they sell it at iTunes, and I would probably make, if I sold 100 records, I might make 50 cents. If I sell a record from my website, I get the price, and it's a way to support the artist. So at pevar.com, Pevar.com, we have all kinds of music there. You can also download it if you're not wanting to buy a CD. You can download that through CD Baby, and we get a very good portion of the sale. And not to say that you shouldn't do iTunes because it's convenient, but the musicians don't make squat, and that's why I encourage you all to support the musicians and go to their websites and buy the music there, because that's the way that they actually make any money worth anything with their records these days.
Well, I included the link on the pre-show, and I'll do it again when I write the liner notes for the post-show, so that people can get to you easily.
So speaking of one more website, my wife, Inger Jorgensen, and I are doing these online concerts from our house. We did 2 so far. There's a website where we are archiving these shows, and they're badass. And part of the reason why they're badass is we have an amazing videographer who's doing these shows and doing an amazing job with multicam. And then I'm able to massage the sound. So the website that we archive these shows is New Bohemia Live. NewBohemialive, newbohemialive.com. We have 2 shows already. One is a duet show with Inger and I. One is a quintet show we just did. We're doing another one on May 1st, which is trio, doing a bunch of Hendrix and stuff. And we're just going to keep doing different types of things. The other website you have to go to is, because I'm such a fan of my wife's work, Inger Nova Jorgensen at Gmail. No, I'm sorry. IngerNovaJorgensen.com.
Great. You'll send me all three
Yeah,
links, and
I'll send you those.
I'll put them in the show
I,
so people
I
will be
am
able to.
confused, and there's so much to remember, and my memory is, it's just, I'm an Aquarius. I'm going to blame it on Aquarius. What else can I blame it on? The sun?
I think Inger just put the website up on the
Thank
thread.
you.
Thank you, Inger.
Thank you,
And
hon.
she put the new Bohemia up. Oh, so Inger's on it. She's got all the links right there.
Awesome. She is the best thing that ever happened to me.
It's wonderful. I'm so,
Really.
it's so wonderful to see you so happy. I saw you about 12 years ago. You were new, and I mean, you'd already been together for a few years, but wildly in love. And it's
Nice.
wonderful to see it sustaining through the years. And
Well, with COVID, it's certainly been a test for relationships, I'm sure. And we have gotten closer and closer all the time. And I just adore this person. It's really, I feel like the big force just said, okay, you're ready now. You're ready to, be an adult. Here you go. Here's the keys to the kingdom, and I'm just honored. We do so much for each other, and it's the best thing ever. So love you.
Wonderful to be so happy. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you. I adore you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to meeting Inger, and I can't wait for the day when we can converge back in living rooms and have you guys in mine.
Oh my God, that would be fun.
And come up and see a concert in yours. And thank you so much for doing this, Jeff. I first asked you to do this so many years ago, I can't even count. So I'm thrilled that it finally came to pass. That's the one good thing of COVID, is that now we can do things virtually. We don't have to be in the same room.
And I didn't have the technology together to do it on the level that I would like to do it, and admittedly I've been, working on my singing, which, I'm more of a guitar player than a singer, but I'm giving it my best. And, there's some people like Mark Cohn or, some of these other singers, they just open their mouth and it's just there. And it's like, oh my God. So I think it's important that we push, and hopefully as time goes on, we develop a way to communicate through what it is that we're looking to communicate. But I want to acknowledge you, Vicki, for doing what you're doing and bringing so many people together, to celebrate the arts and to discuss these stories that are part of the embroideries of people's lives that very few people would have the ability to share and maybe be a little fulfilled, from hearing some of these stories and be inspired to work on their dreams. The best thing that I could possibly do for another human being, besides offering my heart and my story, is to give them some happiness and give them some inspiration to pursue their dreams or just enjoy a moment in the sun. So thank you for that opportunity, and God bless you for doing all the work that you're doing. It's an honor to be on your show and spend this time with you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. All the liner notes and everything, and everyone will be able to find this and watch it again, and on YouTube and on iTunes and all that stuff. And
Awesome.
all your links for all your stuff will be on the show. And thank you again, Jeff. Thanks so
I
much.
appreciate it. It's an opportunity, that we as musicians and artists have this forum to be able to reach out to the world and share our music and share these passions. And thank you everyone for spending the time viewing this and supporting Vicki's show. You do this every Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
So, come back and support her show. And thanks. We'll hopefully see you all either virtually or at a concert in the near future. Right?
I look forward to it. Take care, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.